Hey guys, tonight we slip between two tables that share the same moonlight but not the same menu. A glittering castle hall where meat crackles over flame, and a hushed monastery refectory where you lift a wooden spoon while a brother reads. One foot stands on rush-strewn oak, the other on cool flagstone. Your knuckles warmed by the hearth even as cloister air chills your wrist. Two climates, one night. You're here to taste how power and prayer season food differently, how a salt cellar can crown a lord, while a bell quietly rules a dozen hungry stomachs, and why a boiled leek can teach you as much about the Middle Ages as a roasted boar. You lean closer, curiosity pricking like spice on the tongue. Was medieval water really undrinkable? Or is that one of our favorite campfire myths? Did cooks bury bland meat under mountains of cinnamon to hide rot? Or were those bright powders mostly a flex of wealth and distance? And what exactly counts as fish when the calendar bans meat for long, echoing stretches of the year? You'll get gentle answers without a quiz. Only torch hiss, page whisper, and your own even breath keeping time. A picture settles in. In the great hall, a peacock, refeathered and gilded, returns to the table like a myth with drumsticks. In the refectory, barley leek pottage steams as steady as sunrise. Somewhere, a cellarer rattles keys, a cook with arms like bellows turns a spit, and a lay brother checks the herb plot at dusk. And because every mystery needs a breadcrumb, you spot the grand salt cellar set like a throne. Those seated above the salt eat the choicest cuts. Those below learn to love pottage. In the monastery, there is no throne, only a book and a bell, the simplest crown in Christendom. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know, where are you listening from tonight, and what time is it for you? Drop it in the comments below, and let's see how far this story travels while the world sleeps. Maybe turn down the volume for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the castle hall. The rushes underfoot crackle softly, sweet herbs mixed in to nudge yesterday's smells toward respectability. The medieval version of a plug-in diffuser, minus the plug. Torches hiss. The hearth breathes. A boar turns, spitting back as if it has grievances. At the high table, the carver stands, almost on stage, his blade catching light, so every slice reads as theater. Farther down, long trestles collect servants, minstrels, and guests of uncertain importance. The zone where you perfect the art of looking grateful and hungry at the same time. Diners often share trenchers, thick rounds of stale bread or wooden boards that catch juices before the dogs do. You and your neighbor divide territory like polite cartographers and pretend you are both tracking the next platter. You sip small ale, mild, cloudy, safer than many town wells where people, animals, and runoff mingle, and it steadies the throat like a familiar song. Historians still argue whether water is always unsafe or simply risky in crowded settlements. Either way, your jug makes a strong case for small ale diplomacy. You also notice the salt. That handsome cellar on the high table isn't just a condiment. It's a compass. Sit above the salt, and your plate travels through brighter sauces and choicer cuts. Sit below, and you learn how infinitely customizable pottage can be. Joke 1. You consider inching closer to the salt when no one is looking, but the hound under the bench promises to report you. Spices glitter too. Contrary to cafeteria legend, they seldom rescue rotten meat, too precious for that. Their trade, status, and thrill in one pinch. A taste of far-off shores carried in a pouch at someone's belt. There's another door. The monastery's refectory wraps you in stone, cool as folded linen. Tables run long and plain, set at right angles, and seating follows rank, not charm. A bell rings, a brother opens a book, the room exhales into listening. Spoon, chew, listen. The rule of Saint Benedict asks for simplicity, usually 2 cooked dishes. Meat from 4-footed animals, limited in the common hall except for the sick. Bread and wine, measured with care. That rhythm explains why the refectory feels steady, even when harvests don't. Discipline doing what weather won't. Your bowl arrives, pottage thick with leeks and barley, the kind of honest texture that tells your jaw it has reliable work to do. On fasting days, and there are many, the menu leans toward fish, dairy where permitted, and ingenuity. In some regions, people classify beaver tail as fish because it lives in water and looks scaly. Is it biology? Not quite. Is it determined compliance? Impressively. You watch a monk keep a straight face and admire the training it must require. Nearby, a brewer tends small ale in the buttery, and the herb garden hums with rosemary, savory, and mint, remedy, flavor, and prayer-wearing leaves. Back in the hall, a platter lands with a sound that wakes appetite like a drum roll. Pepper winks from a dark sauce, not to rescue rot, but to announce trade routes with every sting. Historians still argue whether status signaling or pleasure sits at the top of the spice pyramid. Your mouth, very diplomatically, refuses to choose. Joke 2. You swear you're here for cultural research, not seconds, and then accept seconds in the name of science. Across the room, the Lord smiles for an envoy, and the message is clearer than any letter. Our table is rich, our alliances richer. Now the castle kitchens, where the weather is fire. Scullions scrub until wood shines. A spit boy's forearms are permanent sunrise. And in one corner, a turnspit dog trots a wheel that keeps the roast moving. Joke 3. The little dog gives you a look that says, "Talk to my union," which, unfortunately, won't exist for a few centuries. Baskets arrive from fish ponds and forests. Barrels breathe salt. Spice chests click shut like secrets. Preservation is a choreography. Salting, smoking, drying. That cages time just enough to push flavor into winter. If power in the hall is theater, power in the kitchen is logistics done hot. Drift back to the cloister. Bread cools on racks. Cheese rests in quiet, like patience turned edible. The reader's voice moves through a saint's life, while your spoon moves through your bowl, and your breath matches both. Another mainstream note settles gently. Monastic meals are taken in silence, while a text is read aloud, feeding ear and body together, so talk has no chance to strut. Historians still argue whether such silence always held, or whether low murmurs rose like steam at the far benches. But the ideal, discipline in every bite, does its work even when whispers do, too. Your senses keep comparing without instructions. The hall is noisy with lutes, laughter, and the scrape of knives. The refectory is quiet, with wood on wood, spoon on bowl. The hall teaches you to read without letters, the shine of the saltcellar, the glitter of saffron, the speed a server moves toward or away from you. The refectory teaches another literacy, the steadiness of the reader's voice, the equality of portion, the way gratitude can be measured in how slowly you lower the spoon. One room polishes appetite until it gleams. The other polishes patience until it glows. You notice your posture changing. In the hall, you sit straighter. Perform appetite like loyalty, and time your laughter to the Lord's. In the refectory, you lower your gaze, perform restraint like freedom, and time your swallow to the bell. Neither room lies, both rooms persuade. and that may be the night's first quiet revelation. A meal is a teacher disguised as a plate, and you are always the student leaning forward. When the carver thrives on applause and the reader closes the book, both rooms soften at the edges. You return to the shared doorway, warmed and cooled, amused and sobered, full in different places at once. What comes next is simple. Follow the plates and the rules, and you'll trace the map of money and prayers. Soon you'll slide closer to seating charts, kitchen math, and the algebra of portions. For now, you tuck one bright detail under your tongue: the saltcellar's crown in the hall, the bell's soft command in the cloister. And let both flavors linger as the moon climbs. You cross the hall like a quiet tide, rushes whispering under your boots, and the room arranges itself around you. At one long end, the dais lifts a handspan above the world, the high table beneath a rich canopy that proclaims authority as plainly as a crown. Midway down, trestles stretch toward the screen's passage, that short corridor where buttery, pantry, and kitchen meet the hall like arteries meeting a heart. The plan is practical theater. Service comes through those side doors so you don't watch the sausage being made, only the sausages arriving. Torches flatten your shadow. Dogs weave in expectant loops, and somewhere a harp tests 3 shy notes like a bird warming its voice. An usher with a white wand, human punctuation, nudges the current of diners. You're steered to a bench not by luck, but by rank, favor, and whatever the steward remembers about last week's incident with the greyhound. The high table glows with thick linen and tall candles. Farther down, the boards are generous with length, if not with perks. You settle into your mess, a tiny kinship of 2 to 4 who will share whatever lands before you. Your world is a wooden trencher and a neighbor's elbow, and if you are wise, you will befriend both. You keep one eye on the route from kitchen to dais, like a sailor watching the wind. Bread comes first, and with it, the quiet mathematics of the household. The pantler, master of bread, lays down trencher loaves, sturdy, sometimes yesterdays, because bread here is plate, sponge, and final course all in one. A butler, lord of the butts and bottles, posts a jug of small ale by your elbow, and you feel the room calm a notch. Small ale is the common medieval handshake, mild and generally safer than town wells, where humans, animals, and runoff like to socialize without your permission. Mainstream fact, simple as salt: the lord and honored guests sit raised on the dais, while the household arrays downhill, and service enters through the screens, so drafts and kitchen commotion don't parade past noble noses. Now the little crown you learn to watch. The salt cellar near the high table, shining like a tower on campaign. Some households use it as a social equator. Sit above the salt, and plates orbit you with choicer cuts and brighter sauces. Sit below, and you grow intimate with pottage, which, to its credit, never stops trying. You toy with migrating 2 seats north, and then remember you like your kneecaps more than you love saffron. A boy approaches with a ewer and basin. You hold your hands above the gleam, and cool water arcs over your fingers, the medieval equivalent of a welcome mint. You dry on linen that has heard more whispers than a market street, and breathe the clean. Utensils speak as clearly as chairs. You carry your own knife, the spoon is provided, and if you produce a 2-pronged fork, you'll collect more side eyes than compliments. Outside of Italy, table forks are still exotic habits. The sewer, chief server, not what it sounds like, conducts the flow, and the carver works at the high table, like a calligrapher slicing letters into meat. Heralds may blow for a course when the Lord wants attention to pivot. On very fine tables, a nef, a tiny silver ship, sometimes sails the linen, a tabletop vessel for spices or cutlery. It points its little prow toward your plate, as if to say, "This course comes from overseas, and so, frankly, do your bragging rights." The first platter lands at your mess with a thud that praises the kitchen more honestly than any poem. Sharing begins. You and your neighbors divide geography. This promontory of capon, that estuary of sauce, while the steward counts portions with the cool mercy of arithmetic. Household ordinances in many places specify bread and ale allowances by rank. Your belly quickly confirms how math turns into feeling. Close to the canopy, the menu speaks multiple languages: ginger, grains of paradise, cubeb, pepper. Down the trestles, the vocabulary narrows to sturdy nouns: pottage, barley, broth, bread. You decide to think of your position as flavor adjacent, which sounds better than 3 benches south. Meanwhile, business slides along the boards as easily as bowls. The Great Hall is not only dining room, but office, courtroom, and lobby. And you feel that truth when the Lord leans toward a guest and lowers his voice. A marriage is hinted at with a gifted dish. A land dispute cools with wine. A grievance reheats with spice. Historians still argue whether women at the high table wielded more influence with plates than with parchment, but you watch the lady send a delicately sauced portion to a visiting captain and conclude that culinary diplomacy is a language with native speakers. Somewhere near the canopy, a seal is not pressed into wax, it is pressed into pastry. Follow a platter's journey back the way it came. From the kitchens, hot, smoky, orchestral, to the screen's passage, dishes pause for a taster who stands between appetite and accident. The cupbearer lifts, sips, waits, the carver nods, the sewer dispatches. It is safety dressed as ritual and theater you can eat. Even from your seat, you recognize the high table's subtle gloss. A last drizzle of verjuice, a tart green flicker, an extra crack of pepper that smells like far coasts, a dab of saffron that turns a sauce into sunrise. You catch the scent and feel your curiosity lean forward like a hound at a whistle. What does not glitter is still counted. Broken meats, the clean scraps, don't vanish. The almoner gathers them for distribution at the gate, where the poor wait with bowls that know this timetable better than any bell. The hounds do honest sanitation. The kitchen staff claim their due. You breathe a small relief at the arithmetic of mercy hiding among the arithmetic of rank. You privately retire all your snark about modern meal prep. These folks do logistics with fire, livestock, weather, and a spreadsheet that hasn't been invented. Also, their filing system barks. Etiquette hums through your hands. Tear, don't hack. Dip bread, not fingers. Point your knife at the board, not your neighbor. Share the trencher like a treaty. Don't feed the dogs unless the Lord does first. Unless you enjoy a chorus of hopeful noses harmonizing below your bench. Grace begins and ends the performance. Latin leans over bread and cup, gentle as a hand on a shoulder. The rules feel fussy until they feel soothing. And then, you notice how nicely soothing keeps arguments from sprouting in public. Historians still argue whether everyday manners were so polished beyond noble circles, but the ideal, clean hands, controlled gestures, generous passing, keeps the room stitched together. Watch what time does to chairs. A squire who proved himself last week inches a seat upward. A storyteller with a gift for laughter drifts toward the spice box. A retainer who irritated the marshal studies the far trestles like a monk studying penance. The hall remembers in small ways. Another debate lingers in the air. whether ordinary day seating is flexible or rigid outside feast nights. Your bench teaches a workable truth. Hospitality negotiates with necessity. If barley runs short, rank may discover humility. If a great guest arrives, trestles reshuffle like prayer beads. The map of appetite redraws itself with a nod. A fresh course arrives, pike in a green herb sauce, and for a breath, the hall tastes the same season, elite to outsider. You break bread and notice crumb color. Manchette white reserved for the dais. Blauner loaves traveling your way. You try not to profile by crust and fail charmingly. Someone up the slope receives a delicate sugar flourish that glows like a rumor. You get a second ladle of sauce and find it difficult to resent anything. You decide you're in a committed relationship with this pike. No paperwork required. Endings in a hall are choreographies of relief. The high table finishes. Servers rinse fingers into bowls. Napkins are inspected with expressions that translate as, "The laundry will see this and sigh." Dogs are released to mop the floor's morals. The Lord rises. A soft collective exhale moves through the boards. You stand from the warm print your body left on the bench, and the rushes try, kindly, to erase you. The canopy waits without moving. The salt keeps a small moon. The gallery keeps its breath. You step toward the screen's passage and feel the lesson settle in the bones of your shoulders. Where you sit decides what you taste, but also what you learn. Close to the canopy, you learn diplomacy through sauces. Far from it, you learn solidarity through sharing. Both skills travel well into winter and worry, and you carry them with you toward the kitchens, where the next truths are warming by the fire. You slit through the screen's passage, and the temperature rises like a welcome argument. The castle's heartbeat lives here, hot, loud, and spiced with decisions. Smoke lifts in, plumes beneath a hood you could park a cart under. The hood hums with draft, pulling a weather system off the fire and out through stone flues. Your cheeks glow. Your eyes water. Your stomach files a polite petition and then stamps it urgent. The great hall performs appetite. The kitchens manufacture it, one blister at a time. You learn the floor plan with your skin. The kitchen proper holds the great open hearths. The pastry room keeps cooler, away from the blaze. The scullery tilts toward drains and buckets. Nearby the pantry, for bread and tableware, and the buttery, for ale and wine casks, stand like careful accountants, guarding miracles. The larders, wet for fish and meat, dry for grain and spice, sit in the least sunny corner, with thick walls, tiny windows, and an attitude that says, "Rot is the enemy, and time is a sly accomplice." Mainstream fact walks in wearing an apron. Many great households split storage and service like this on purpose. Fire kept distant from barrels and flour, meat hung in cool air, and traffic controlled so food moves in predictable, saner lines. You feel the sanity under the heat. At the nearest hearth, a spit turns, iron groaning soft as an old hymn. A boy trots the wheel with the determination of someone who has already had the pep talk about even roasting and careers with advancement. Above him, a chain rises into darkness, hooked to weights you can't quite see. Someone swears by a jack that can turn the spit by clockwork or by smoke rising. A machine that eats time instead of porridge. Historians still argue whether such mechanical spit jacks were common earlier than the inventories suggest, or whether a handful of celebrated kitchens just made them famous. Your ears vote for any solution that lets the boy sit down. He tells you he's in rotisserie arts, which sounds fancier than "today my legs are the motor." A clerk of the kitchen hovers with a tablet of wax, chalk, or memory, counting portions before portions become disputes. The head cook, broad as a bread oven, conducts 3 fires at once. At the far bench, a sauce maker crushes pepper, ginger, and grains of paradise in a mortar, mixing them with verjuice, the tart juice of pressed unripe grapes, until the air smells like a quarrel between summer and vinegar. A pastry cook works dough into a coffin, the edible box that will cradle a pie. Sometimes that coffin is meant to be eaten. Other times it's armor for the filling and a plate for the trencher. Food doing double duty because wood and time aren't free. You listen to a dozen knives gossip against cutting boards. The sound is cheerful and relentless. Deliveries arrive like plot twists. From the forest, venison on hooks, rabbits braided by their feet, baskets of herbs asleep under damp cloth. From fish pond and river, pike and carp in wicker, eels coiling like punctuation that refused a period. From the dovecote, fat pigeons for quick dinners, the medieval equivalent of a freezer that coos. The porter's tally meets the cellarer's glare, barrels groan into place. Salt is readied the way a general readies maps. Preservation here is a choreography of methods. Salting, smoking, drying, pickling, that buys a household the superpower of February. A scullion tells you their real patron saint is salt, with pepper as the loud friend who steals the scene. You peek into the wet larder and learn a cool lesson about patience. Hooks hold quarters to air. Cloth shields fly tempting places. A cat patrols with professional aloofness. The dry larder smells like hope. Grain, onions braided like garlands, sacks of peas, stacked cheese that has learned to be quiet. A spice chest the size of a bread loaf carries more cash value than a small meadow. Its little drawers slide like secrets, each one a door to somewhere warmer than this island. A wealthy household might keep a narwhal tusk and call it a unicorn horn, believing it could detect or neutralize poison. Whether it ever did more than impress guests is unclear. What is clear is that it punctures the afternoon with a whisper of wonder. Near the scullery, the chemistry of cleanliness plays out with buckets and ash. Wood ash becomes lye that strips grease. Sand scrubs pewter without mercy. Horsetail stems, those rough, jointed plants, make a natural scouring brush. Earthenware pipkins simmer gently at the fire's edge. Iron pots thunder in the hotter zones. Spits complain. Trivets, grids, and hooks ladder up and down the heat like a manual for gravity. You learn the kitchen's dialect for fuel. Hardwood that makes coals, softwood that flares, peat if you must, charcoal if you can. The fire is both boss and employee, and everyone knows the cost on faces and forest. A boy runs in with a wrapped bundle, herbs from the not Arden, sage, parsley, savory, hyssop, still wet with breath. We herbwife, or just the cook with a soft spot for green things, folds them into sauces or hangs them up to dry. Almonds grind into milk for lean day dishes and fashionable soups. Saffron bleeds gold into a pot like sunrise, discovering it can boil. You notice the steady presence of vinegar, must, and verjuice. Tartness is an old friend around here, bright enough to make ordinary days taste intent on living. Historians still argue whether the average palate loved sour profiles or whether cooks leaned on acids to make salted and dried foods feel springy again. But your mouth is happily bipartisan. Paperwork, yes, even here, happens in ledgers that smell faintly of onion from the scribe's hands. The clerk notes how many loaves the pantler issues, how many gallons the butler draws, how many capons the poulterer sends up, how many eggs the dairymaid promises, and the cat disputes. Household ordinances in some places specify daily allowances. So many loaves, so much ale per person, meat days and fish days drawn like a map in ink and conscience. The kitchen obeys the calendar with a mixture of piety and hack. Fish dominates on fast days. Meat broth becomes well-seasoned vegetable water if anyone influential is squinting. You hear someone mutter, "If an eel swims in a gravy, is it still a fish?" And decide the theologians can have that one. Watch the pastry room again. It's cooler by design, so butter behaves. The waferer, yes, a roll, presses thin wafers with iron molds that kiss batter into crisp leaves stamped with patterns. They'll arrive with spiced wine at the end, a sweet farewell with a sermon's gentleness. Sugar, when it appears, is medicine and marvel, used in pastas and sateltes, edible sculptures that can act out stories between courses. If the Lord wants it, a sugar castle might crumble to reveal almond milk fountains, or a tiny pastry ship might sail across a platter with a flag bearing someone's future. You think of the silver nef gliding across linen upstairs and realize the kitchen is the shipyard. Not everything here is spectacle. Oatmeal becomes breakfast for the staff. A cauldron of perpetual pottage accepts today's generosity, tomorrow's thrift, and yesterday's honesty. The baker tests bread in the oven by sound, a knuckle knocking the crust and listening for hollow. Loaves carry marks, household badges or baker's stamps, so accounts keep their temper. When harvests are lean, the bread shifts personality. More rye, more peas, more discussion, and you notice how quickly your jaw learns the vocabulary of scarcity. Historians still argue whether noble households ate meat at a frequency modern imaginations assume, or whether high days and show meals dominate the records. Either way, the kitchen's daily labor tastes mostly of grain, legumes, and whatever the season believes in. Somewhere a gardener arrives with leeks, and you remember the monastery's barley leek pottage like a cousin in another county. Almond milk for Lent, fish for Friday, herbs for everyday courage. The kitchens of power and prayer rhyme more than they admit. Yet differences persist. In the castle, timing answers theater. In the monastery, timing answers the bell. Both fund a sort of peace, one with showy plenty, the other with practiced restraint. You picture the saltcellar's little crown and the refectory's little book, and recognize that the kitchens serve both symbols faithfully, two altars heated by the same wood. A taster appears at the door, trusted and watched, and for a moment, the heat inherits a hush. Bowls pass, a spoon dips, patience counts to 10, like an old nurse. Poison sits in the imagination like a spider. Prevention stands in a human's body like a fence. The turnspit's wheel creaks. The mortar resumes its thud. Life returns to the key of appetite. You take a last look at the cat doing quiet payroll, at the boy negotiating with a fire, at the clerk annotating tomorrow before today is done, and you slip back toward the hall with the kitchen's grammar on your clothes. As the door swings behind you, a breath of cooler air cleans the smoke from your tongue, and you carry out a hard-won truth. The show upstairs depends on the math downstairs. A carved peacock can only dazzle if someone salted, hung, basted, counted, and prayed it there. When winter blows against the shutters, the kitchens answer with barrels, brine, and nerve. And when summer grows lush and easily satisfied, the kitchens still insist on discipline, because February is never as far away as July pretends. You tuck that certainty beside the other talismans, a bell, a salt cellar, and feel the story move you toward an ordinary day's menu, where the true character of both worlds reveals itself like steam when a lid finally lifts. You come back to the hall when it isn't feast night, and the first thing you notice is how ordinary smells can be. A gentle steam of barley, onions, and cabbage instead of a gilded peacock that once saw more gold leaf than grain. The castle on a Tuesday evening has less theater, more calories, and if you're honest, more truth. A mess of retainers leans on pottage, the default dish that holds Europe together. Grain, water, a few vegetables, maybe a bone for flavor, and patience. That's the blueprint. Your spoon finds texture instead of glamour, and you realize comfort is a better guest than spectacle. Bread lands first, and bread does the sorting for you. Up on the dais, manchet, the fine white bread made from bolted flour, soft as reputation. Down your way, maslin, a darker blend of wheat and rye, or even horse bread, bulked out with peas or beans. It fills you just the same, but it chews like duty instead of applause. Medieval diets, even in castles, leaned heavily on bread. Meat was a treat, not a given, and the difference between manchet and horse bread was a map of rank that every jaw could read. You sip small ale, the table's common glue. Brewing happens constantly because ale turns faster than gossip, and everyone drinks it, children included. It's nourishing, mild, and usually safer than water that hasn't made the trip through fire. The butler manages supply like a conductor, and your jug is never entirely empty unless you've drifted too far from the kitchen door. Historians still argue whether ale replaced water completely, or whether streams and wells offered decent options depending on luck and geography. Tonight, you raise your mug, taste malt and yeast, and decide the debate can keep talking while you keep sipping. The meat, when it comes, is rationed carefully. A haunch of venison might appear, but only near the high table. Your bench sees salted pork, maybe boiled, maybe roasted, maybe both in the same week, depending on the hunt and the season. Pies arrive, the coffins sometimes edible, sometimes structural, always practical. You share a trencher with a neighbor, the bread acting as plate, napkin, and eventually supper for the poor when it's handed out the next morning. You think of it as the world's first to-go container, and realize it's greener than anything modern plastic ever promised. Sauces matter here more than extravagance admits. Verjuice, vinegar, mustard, flavors that spark the tongue and distract from salt's heavy hand. Pepper is a rare friend who drops by, more often in noble company. A ladle of broth circles the room, its flavor depending on whether bones were generous or stingy that day. Cheese appears when the dairy is kind, eggs when the hens agree, fish when the ponds cooperate. You taste seasonality in every bite: spring herbs, autumn roots, winter salt. Some households maintained giant fish ponds near the castle walls so that Fridays and fast days could be observed without anxiety. Fish is faith, logistics, and dinner rolled into one slippery package. Your senses keep tabs on leftovers too. Broken meats, scraps from the high table, don't vanish. They find their way to servants or alms. Dogs receive bones, staff claim shares, and the poor at the gate know to wait for the steward's call. The system is a ladder of appetite, and every rung gets something, if not everything. Historians still argue whether this trickle-down generosity genuinely softened hunger or whether it was more symbolic than sustaining. The truth probably tastes different in every household. You imagine a medieval Yelp review. Portions fair, flavor depends on your rank, But hey, the dog seemed happy. Seasons write menus with heavier ink than any steward. In summer, you chew beans, peas, fresh greens. In autumn, nuts, apples, root vegetables. In winter, salted meat, pickled vegetables, bread that leans harder on rye. Fasts push fish into unexpected corners, and Lent stretches imagination thin. Spices, when they appear, act like fireworks against a night sky, sudden, bright, and fleeting. For most tables, though, dinner is steady and repetitive. Pottage today, pottage tomorrow, and perhaps pottage flavored with slightly different regrets on Thursday. You sigh and admit it. Routine is sometimes the strongest seasoning. You glance toward the dais again. Even on ordinary nights, a little theater persists. A finer cut, a brighter sauce, a sweet course of wafers or spiced wine. You realize that feasts might dazzle, but daily dinners instruct. They teach patience, reinforce rank, and remind you that sustenance is not spectacle. The Great Hall, on most nights, hums like a kitchen stretched thinner and a family stretched wider. It is survival with manners attached. A trencher grows soft under broth, and you think of how tomorrow it will feed the poor. A jug of ale empties halfway and refills without comment. A ladle of pottage makes another lap, and your mess accepts it without complaint. You whisper thanks to barley for showing up every day like the world's most reliable coworker. And when the steward calls the final course, you wipe your knife, share a crumb, and step away full enough, thoughtful enough, and ready to admit that everyday food writes the longer story. You carry this truth like a coin between your fingers. Feast nights glitter, but ordinary nights feed. The castle proves its power not by gold leaf on peacock feathers, but by bread still warm in January, and ale still flowing when the well sulks. You leave the hall into the cooler air, the salt cellar glowing faintly behind you, and wonder what the next chapter tastes like when splendor is the point, not the background. You sit back down in the hall on a night when nothing is ordinary anymore. The torches throw longer shadows, minstrels tune louder than usual, and servants dart like sparks because a feast is a performance staged on tables. Where yesterday you tasted barley pottage and rye bread, tonight you brace yourself for a parade of marvels designed less to fill stomachs and more to dazzle eyes. The hall becomes a theater, and dinner is the script. The first spectacle marches in, a boar's head dressed in laurel, its mouth stuffed with an orange to look less menacing and more triumphant. Behind it, dishes arrive 2 by 2, borne high so that everyone in the hall must tilt their heads to witness. At major occasions, weddings, diplomatic visits, saints' days, the sequence of courses and dishes was as carefully rehearsed as a play, often with dozens of courses, some edible, some symbolic. The kitchen and the hall collaborate in this illusion of infinite plenty. Then comes the subtlety, the subtlety. Imagine a sugar sculpture shaped like a castle under siege, or a pastry stag that bleeds red wine when carved. Subtleties are edible puzzles, metaphors plated with almonds and honey. They carry messages too. A saint defeating a dragon, a king triumphant over rivals, an alliance sweetened in marzipan. Records mention a dish where pies were baked with live birds inside, released at the table so feathers and flapping wings became part of the entertainment. You wonder if the medieval fire marshal had to sign off on that idea, or if everyone just prayed the pigeons had good manners. Feasts are power disguised as food. When gilded peacocks return to the table with their feathers reattached, roasted and redressed in shimmering skin, they speak of trade networks and money more loudly than the minstrels do. A castle kitchen might have imported pepper from India, cinnamon from Sri Lanka, sugar from Cyprus, and saffron from Spain. Also, that one lord could lean back and smile at another across the candles. Historians still argue whether the real goal of these extravagances was diplomatic theater, personal indulgence, or competition between households. To your eyes, the answer looks like yes. As platters turn into pageants, servers pace the rhythm of the evening. Sauces bright with ginger, cloves, and galangal. The taste is sharp, foreign, and unmistakable. Spice is theater in a pinch. Its presence announces global reach. You try to pronounce galangal correctly and nearly bite your own tongue, proof that the spice is dangerous even before it touches food. The point, though, is made. Wealth here doesn't just shine. It burns, perfumes, and stings. The steward's arithmetic still matters. No feast works without discipline. But the arithmetic tonight is hidden under sugar and song. Broken meats will still feed the poor tomorrow, but tonight's performance is about feeding pride. You watch the Lord exchange knowing glances with the abbot seated nearby, each subtlety serving as much to the mind as to the stomach. A pie becomes a treaty, a sugar castle a claim, a gilded bird an argument made with feathers instead of parchment. You notice your own role in this theater. You're expected to marvel, to applaud softly, to taste carefully, to praise generously. Sharing trencher space is still the rule, but you suddenly realize you're sharing a spectacle as much as a plate. You find yourself comparing this to a monastery table, where silence rules and symbolism comes from scripture, not sugar. The contrast is stark. One table talks with theater, the other with restraint. Both leave you full, but in different chambers of your chest. Dessert closes the curtain. Wafers stamped with designs. Spiced wine warmed in a ewer. Candied fruits glowing like small lanterns. You sip slowly, tasting cloves and cinnamon, riding the wine like old sailors. Historians still argue whether dessert was truly separate in medieval meals, or simply the sweetened end of the same course. Whatever the scholarly verdict, your mouth happily declares its own truth. The night tastes like sugar and firelight. You picture yourself writing a medieval Yelp review. The entertainment was lively. The pie was full of birds, and the peacock made eye contact. 5 stars. Would attend treaty negotiations again. When the feast winds down, grace is said, the Lord rises, and servants sweep away the remains with weary efficiency. The hall exhales. Dogs rush in. Guests shuffle out, and you step away carrying more than flavor. You carry a truth. Feasts are mirrors polished with food. They show guests not just what a lord eats, but what he wants the world to believe he is. And as you leave the hall for quieter air, you realize you've learned something the monastery will echo back later. That food is always more than food. You return to your bench, and now the feast is gone. The ale jug half empty, the rushes smelling faintly of grease. What remains is the choreography of manners, the invisible glue that kept all those bodies from becoming a brawl with bread knives. Tonight you pay closer attention, watching how every motion is a message and every trencher tells a story. A servant appears with basin and ewer. You stretch your hands, palms down, while cool water pours over your fingers. This ritual of hand washing is more than hygiene. It's a kind of preface, a declaration that what happens next has rules. Medieval etiquette books, from France to England, carefully prescribed the sequence, reminding diners to wash before and after eating, to keep nails clean, and to wipe fingers on the napkin, not on your neighbor's sleeve. You can feel the discipline shaping appetite before the first bite. You and your mess, your dining group, share one trencher. At first it seems intimate, almost conspiratorial, tearing bread side by side. Then you realize it's also surveillance. No one can overreach without being noticed. You portion carefully, dipping bread into sauce, not plunging fingers like a reckless thief. The trencher absorbs juices, softening into a savory pudding by the end, destined either for the dogs beneath or the poor beyond the gate. In some courts, the trencher was actually a slice of fine bread given to guests of honor, while others dined from wooden slabs. Here, you share one stale loaf with your neighbor, who is already hogging the saucier side. Knives glint. You brought your own because hosts don't provide them. A spoon may be set, but forks are rare curiosities, more Italian gossip than English habit. You slice carefully, angle meat toward your trencher, and remember not to lick the blade unless you want to demonstrate you were raised in a barn. Salt sits in its cellar on the dais, and etiquette decrees you don't pinch directly. You wait, nod politely, and take what's offered. Salt is precious, a jewel ground into white dust. You picture a medieval mother shouting, "Don't double dip the salt," and realize nagging is timeless. Dogs loiter like critics underfoot, eyes trained on slips and scraps. You're tempted to sneak a morsel, but etiquette manuals frown. Only the Lord decides when generosity descends. Feeding hounds uninvited marks you as ignorant at best, disloyal at worst. Still, you feel the warm nudge of a muzzle against your ankle and nearly break the rule. Historians still argue whether these etiquette books represented everyday practice or only elite ideals, whether real diners kept such dignity after the third jug of ale. Watching the greasy fingers 2 seats down, you're inclined to side with skepticism. The carver steps forward at the high table. He slices with ceremony, each cut precise, as if meat were manuscript. His position is an honor, requiring training, grace, and sometimes poetry. The sewer, the chief server, directs courses like a conductor. Their movements are not only about food, but about order. A well-served table reflects the Lord's authority. You imagine your modern cafeteria with a carver in robes declaiming over each slice of pizza, and suddenly, medieval theater seems less absurd. Rules pile like breadcrumbs. Don't scratch. Don't blow your nose with the tablecloth. Don't talk with your mouth full. Tear bread. Don't bite from the loaf. Keep elbows off the board. Share food graciously and never drain the communal cup in one go unless you enjoy unfriendly stares. At first it seems fussy, but soon you notice how it smooths the room, turning dozens of hungry people into a kind of orchestra instead of a riot. Conversation itself is performance. You laugh when the Lord laughs, listen when he listens, and avoid topics that sour the ale. The hall buzzes, but it also polices itself. Historians still argue whether women in noble halls wielded equal voice at table or whether their role was more decorative. You, watching the lady send a trencher to a favored guest with the faintest smile, conclude influence can travel on a plate. As the meal winds down, etiquette dictates one more wash. Water pours again. This time, scented with rosemary or mint to cleanse not only hands, but also the air. Wafers and spiced wine close the ritual, sweet and warming, easing you toward contentment. Dogs surge forward at last. The poor wait at the gate, and the hall exhales. You realize etiquette isn't simply manners. It's architecture. It builds invisible walls, sets invisible chairs, and turns appetite into a quiet display of civilization. You imagine writing a medieval self-help book, how to win friends and influence lords through proper trencher sharing, and suspect it might have outsold the Psalms on feast nights. When you finally step back, you carry a truth sharper than any knife. Eating is never just eating. Every gesture, from dipping bread to passing salt, whispers rank, loyalty, and grace. The monastery will soon offer silence and scripture in place of chatter and show. But the lesson will rhyme. Food is ritual, and ritual is power. You find yourself following a scent trail out of the hall and back into the storerooms, where barrels breathe quietly in the dark and spice chests glimmer like locked treasure. Tonight's lesson is not about bread or manners, but about what makes flavor survive the year. Salt, smoke, and spice, the medieval trinity of preservation and power, wait in the wings like backstage actors. Salt comes first, the backbone of every larder. Great mounds arrive from coastal pans or inland mines, then move into kitchens by sack or by barrel. Salt was so vital that towns like Lüneburg and Salzburg drew their very names from it, and trade routes built fortunes on white crystals. Without it, meat rots, fish stinks, and households starve through winter. With it, pork can hang, fish can travel, and even butter dares to last. You touch a coarse grain and imagine it outliving the boar it cured. In the smokehouse, wood and patience make their bargain. Hooks swing gently, holding hams, sausages, and sides of bacon. The air tastes thick and sharp, and your clothes instantly agree to carry it home. Smoking doesn't just preserve, it seasons, turning survival into flavor. You understand why every great house keeps fuel stacked high, and why disputes over woodland rights can turn fiery. In some places, families used smoke lofts above their kitchens so thoroughly that the rafters grew black and greasy, and fire risk became a kind of lottery no one wanted to win. Spices add another layer, bright as a banner on a cloudy day. Pepper, cinnamon, ginger, cloves, saffron, each arrives from oceans away, carried by merchants who risk pirates, storms, and taxes at every port. They cost more than silver, often more than gold by weight. To sprinkle pepper on your pottage is to announce that your table stretches across continents. Historians still argue whether nobles truly used spices to mask spoiled meat or whether that's a modern myth. Watching how carefully the cook pinches saffron into a sauce, you suspect waste was rare. Spoiled food would sooner be fed to dogs than dusted with gold. You sip ale again, but tonight you notice how it changes with preservation tricks. Some households add herbs for longevity. Others rely on fresh brewing every few days. Wine is trickier. Casks must be sealed, cared for, and drunk before sourness creeps in. Saltfish, barrels of herring, kegs of stockfish, these are currency as much as food. A lord who can keep his household fed through Lent is a lord who proves competence without lifting a sword. You wonder how medieval people would view your modern freezer and picture them bowing in reverence to a humming white box that can turn summer berries into February miracles. Herbs also play their part. Rosemary, sage, and thyme dry easily and keep flavor alive through winter. Vinegar and verjuice step in where lemon cannot. You realize medieval palates tilted toward the sour, the sharp, the spiced. Not blandness, but boldness rooted in necessity. Preservation isn't just about storage, it shapes taste. People learn to crave what helps them survive. The cellarer keeps records with the seriousness of a judge. How many sacks of salt remain? How many barrels of herring? How much saffron before Easter? In an age before refrigeration, memory and ink are the real vaults of power. You imagine him sighing over missing peppercorns, the way a modern parent sighs over vanishing cookies. Except each peppercorn could buy a small field. Even sweets owe themselves to preservation. Candied fruits, boiled in honey or sugar, arrive at table as luxury incarnate. They sparkle like jewels, their sweetness doubling as medicine in theory, if not in practice. Sugar itself, more medicine than staple, is precious, rarer than salt, its crystals weighed with care. A dish of candied quince on the high table is more than dessert. It's a flag planted in trade and fortune. Historians still argue whether ordinary households tasted spice at all, or if it remained locked in elite pantries. Perhaps a pinch of pepper, carried home in a pouch, flavored a wedding feast for villagers once a year. Perhaps not. You close your eyes and imagine being that villager, tasting one bright spark of cinnamon before returning to the year's barley and beans. The contrast is so sharp, it makes your teeth ache, even in imagination. You decide that if you ever invented time travel, you wouldn't bother visiting kings. You'd visit the spice traders, sell one jar of nutmeg, and retire. As you leave the larders, your tongue remembers salt, your nose carries smoke, and your imagination clings to pepper. You realize preservation is more than survival. It's a story of power, wealth, and taste. Castles invest in salt like armies. Monasteries tend smokehouses like chapels, and across seas, merchants sail, carrying tiny packets worth more than a knight's ransom. Every preserved bite is a promise. Winter won't starve us, Lent won't undo us, distance won't silence us. You step back into the hall and know the next lesson waits in the jug and cup, because thirst, too, has its map. You lift a jug and realize that thirst is never just thirst. It's class, geography, and safety all poured into one cup. The medieval table drinks differently depending on who you are and where you sit. Tonight, the jug teaches you more than the trencher. At your bench, you sip small ale, mild, cloudy, and nourishing enough to count as food. Brewed daily or every few days, it's low in alcohol but high in reliability. In much of Northern Europe, ale was the staple drink, consumed by children and adults alike, because water was often questionable in towns and castles where waste and wells were awkward neighbors. Your lips taste malt and yeast, and you thank fire for killing what your eyes cannot see. Higher up the hall, jugs of wine circulate, imported from Gascony, Italy, or the Rhineland. Wine announces both wealth and reach. Lords store it in casks. The butler guards it like a banker, and serving it at the dais is as much about signaling connections as quenching thirst. You notice it's not always fine. Sometimes it's sour, sometimes cut with water or herbs. Historians still argue whether wine was everyday fare for the nobility or an occasional luxury. But tonight, the ruby glint in goblets near the canopy tells you it was close to identity itself. In some monasteries and noble households, wine was thickened with egg yolks, spiced with cinnamon, or even mulled hot with cloves. It turned from simple grape into a recipe, a drink that warmed both tongue and status. You take a sip and think, this is basically medieval pumpkin spice latte, minus the pumpkin and the latte. Water lingers in the background, mistrusted in cities but perfectly drinkable in many rural estates and monasteries. Clear springs and wells could provide good water, but no one wrote poems about it. Ale and wine stole the spotlight, leaving water to play understudy. Still, when a monk cups his hands at a cloister fountain, the taste is sharper, purer, and humbler than any spiced claret. You sense that faith doesn't always need fermentation. Honey, too, has a role. Mead, that golden ferment of honey and water, appears at some noble feasts, though not as common as ale or wine, sweet, heady, and a little unpredictable. It speaks of older traditions that never quite die. You swallow and taste something closer to myth than meal. You picture a medieval bar menu: ale for the kids, wine for the boss, mead for the dreamers, and realize you've already overrun your budget. Drink, like food, obeys the calendar. Lent and fast days affect not only meat but also indulgent beverages. Ale remains safe, wine sometimes flows thinner, and mead may be reserved for high feasts. Hospitality demands sharing, though. Deny a guest a drink, and you deny them fellowship. Historians still argue whether monasteries allowed monks too much or too little wine. The rule of Saint Benedict permits a hemina, a modest measure per monk, but debates raged over whether that was discipline or leniency. Imagine trying to enforce 1 cup only in a hall of thirsty brothers. Your senses keep track of the vessels too. Earthenware mugs, wooden cups, pewter goblets, silver chalices, all carry the same liquid, but whisper different messages. Your hand learns status by weight. Near the dais, gilded cups glimmer like trophies. At your bench, a mug is practical, a vessel that spills less and argues less. You decide that pewter mugs are the medieval equivalent of standard-issue coffee mugs, complete with the possibility of someone else mistaking yours for theirs. The hall hums with different drinks for different throats. Ale for most, wine for some, water for the cautious, mead for the festive. Each sip maps your place in the world. You realize thirst is never neutral. It is trade, wealth, piety, and survival disguised as refreshment. When the jug empties and refills, you feel time itself flow. Every drink a small negotiation between body and custom. You set down your cup, tongue warm with malt, mind warm with realization. The story of medieval dining isn't just what you chew, but what you swallow, and what that swallow tells others about you. Ahead waits the monastery, where bells, silence, and scripture will govern first, as surely as appetite. The hall fades, and stone grows cooler under your feet. You follow a bell instead of a trumpet, and the sound leads you into a different world. The monastery refectory. Here, appetite kneels to order. The benches stretch long and narrow, the tables laid plain, the air wrapped in discipline, so tight that even your breath wants to walk in step. A bell strikes. Everyone pauses, then moves together like a tide. The brothers file in, each taking his place according to seniority. The rule of Saint Benedict, written, it's not chatter, but scripture. Saints' lives, or sometimes the rule itself. His voice fills the silence the way a lute filled the castle hall. Only softer, steadier. You lift a spoon to your lips while your ears lift words to your mind, and both feed you at once. Historians still argue whether that silence was always absolute. Records suggest murmurs, quiet jokes, or even the occasional cough of rebellion. But the ideal is here in front of you, a table humming with discipline instead of conversation. Your bowl holds pottage, thick with barley and leeks, hearty but simple. Bread rests by your side, darker than castle manchet, but honest. Filling, sturdy as stone. Wine, yes, but measured, about a hemina per monk, roughly half a pint, a portion Benedict himself thought moderate. When disputes arose about whether water should replace wine, Monks protested so vigorously that abbots often compromised. One 9th century commentary even jokes that no monk should complain unless he can find a better drink than wine. You imagine a medieval monk sighing, "Water? At dinner? What are we? Hermits." There are no dogs under the benches, no minstrels, no gilded peacocks. The drama here is in the reader's voice, not the platter. Food is equal. No saltcellar to divide ranks. The abbot eats the same bread as the youngest novice. You notice the difference in posture, heads lowered, spoons moving in rhythm. Each bite neither hurried nor delayed. The table itself feels like a prayer. Work supports it. Gardens in the cloister grow vegetables and herbs. Fish ponds supply Friday meals, and lay brothers labor in kitchens to keep the rhythm unbroken. A cellarer oversees supplies, a cook prepares portions. A guest master tends to travelers at a separate table. Hospitality is a duty, and often guests eat better than the monks themselves, because generosity, like prayer, is part of the rule. You picture the monks secretly trading recipes in the scriptorium. Brother Matthew's lentil surprise, before quickly hiding the parchment under a psalter when the abbot passes. As you eat, you notice the calendar has power here too. Fasting days outnumber feast days, and fish often replaces meat. Meals shrink during Lent, with bread and vegetables carrying most of the burden. But the silence doesn't shrink. It deepens, like the bell tolling across a valley. You chew slowly, hearing scripture wrap around your spoon, and realize hunger here is both physical and spiritual discipline. When the meal ends, the reader closes his book. The bell rings again, and grace flows over the benches like a quiet tide. Dishes are cleared without chatter, leftovers portioned, water poured for washing. No applause, no minstrels, no spectacle, only order, ritual, and calm. You leave the hall feeling less full than in the castle, but more settled, as if silence itself has fed you. You can't help but imagine Yelp reviewing this place. Atmosphere, serene. Entertainment. One audiobook on loop. Portion size, sufficient. Would return, but maybe bring my own pepper. You step back into the cloister work. Stone cool underfoot. Herbs brushing air. Bell still echoing in your ears. Tonight you've learned that food isn't only about taste. In monasteries, it is obedience, equality, and discipline ladled into a bowl. Appetite has to learn new manners here, not with salt or trencher, but with silence and scripture. And as the dusk deepens, you carry forward the sound of that bell, promising that the next course of this journey will be cooked not by feasts or rituals, but by work. Steady, humble, and holy. You follow the scent of wood smoke and bread into another wing of the monastery, where the kitchen breathes more quietly than any castle hearth. There is no spitboy racing a wheel, no sauce maker crushing pepper worth its weight in silver. Here, the rhythm is steady, practical, almost prayerful. Meals are not a spectacle, but a habit, and that habit is built by many hands. The lay brothers work hardest, those who serve rather than chant in choir. They stoke fires, stir pottage, bake bread, and keep fish ponds supplied. Monasteries often ran like small self-sufficient estates with divisions of labor that included gardeners, brewers, bakers, and cellarers. Each role carried dignity because each role kept the rule running smoothly. You can feel that dignity in the way a brother kneads dough, his hands pressing faith into flour. The cellarer, a figure of immense responsibility, oversees provisions. He is part steward, part accountant, part diplomat. He knows how much barley to spare, how much ale to brew, how many guests might arrive at short notice. His keys jingle like bells of authority. Some monastic records show cellarers being scolded for generosity that tipped into excess, accused of indulging visiting nobles with more wine than the rule allowed. You picture him shrugging, saying, "Hospitality is holy," while the abbot raises an eyebrow. The brewer tends barrels with monkish patience. Small ale flows here too, but steadier than in castles, measured and recorded. Monks believed in moderation, but also in nourishment. Ale was liquid bread, an anchor in fasts and cold months. The herb garden feeds both kitchen and infirmary, each plant holding double duty. Leeks, onions, garlic, cabbage, parsley, mint, and sage move from soil to pot with barely a pause. You imagine Brother Thomas defending his recipe. This pottage has personality. To a refectory full of silent faces, none allowed to respond. Bread anchors the diet. Darker, denser loaves appear daily, enough for 2 meals, sometimes 3. Cheese is common, butter when allowed, eggs when permitted. The rhythm is humble but consistent. Historians still argue whether monasteries truly ate less meat than noble households, or whether loopholes, like calling beaver fish, meant protein snuck in through the side door. Either way, the spirit of restraint lingers in every dish, even when the letter of the law flexes. Guests sit at a separate table, and here the paradox shines. Strangers sometimes eat better than brothers. Hospitality was sacred, a reflection of Christ in every traveler. So while monks spoon barley, a guest might receive fish or chicken, bread whiter than the cloisters' usual, or wine poured more generously. You picture locals showing up, claiming to be pilgrims, and mysteriously always arriving at mealtime. The kitchen also observes the seasons. During Lent, menus tighten further. No meat from 4-footed animals, more reliance on fish. He realized the kitchen here is so calm, it could double as a meditation retreat, provided you're okay with cabbage being the incense. When you step back into the cloister, you feel the difference settle into your bones. Castle kitchens chase spectacle, juggling fire and gold. Monastic kitchens chase steadiness, tending broth and bread. One feeds pride, the other feeds discipline, and both, in their own way, keep hunger at bay and meaning on the table. Ahead lies the calendar of fasts, where fish swims into unlikely disguises and loopholes wiggle as eagerly as eels. You wake to bells that feel louder than hunger. The calendar has turned, and now appetite obeys stricter rules. In monasteries, and even in castles when piety demanded, the rhythm of fast days reshaped the table. One thing becomes clear fast. Medieval Europe counted far more fast days than feast days. The church calendar required abstinence from meat on Fridays. In Lent, Advent, Ember Days, Vigils of Saints, and countless other occasions. That could add up to more than 100 days each year when flesh from 4-footed animals was off limits. Fish stepped in as the faithful understudy, called on to perform so often that ponds, rivers, and coasts became part of every kitchen strategy. And here's where loopholes shimmer. If it swims, it qualifies. So herring, eels, carp, and pike are common. But monks and nobles alike stretched the definition with creativity. Beaver tail, with its scaly skin, was classed as fish in some places, so it appeared on fast day tables without troubling anyone's conscience. Even barnacle geese, which were believed to hatch from driftwood or barnacles clinging to ships, were declared fish by some clerics, creatures that skipped ordinary birth and so could be eaten on Fridays. You picture a monk defending his dinner by saying, "If it looks like a fish, swims like a fish, and confuses biologists for centuries, then it's fish." At table, the change is clear. Castle feasts feature elaborate fish pies, salmon dressed in sauces, or stockfish pounded into submission and rehydrated for stews. Monasteries lean on ponds stocked with carp, or on rivers where nets are cast with steady patience. Stockfish, dried cod from Norway, travels all the way to English and French kitchens, tough as wood until beaten with hammers, soaked and cooked. Historians still argue whether medieval cooks managed to make stockfish truly delicious, or whether diners simply learned to chew politely while imagining better meals. Vegetables and legumes gain importance on fast days. Lentils, beans, onions, and leeks bulk out pottage, while almond milk often replaces dairy. Almonds are ground with water, strained and turned into a white liquid that stands in for cream or butter in countless Lenten recipes. You sip some and taste something nutty, mild, and surprisingly pleasant. You think of almond milk as the medieval equivalent of soy latte, an acquired taste some monks probably pretended to enjoy more than they did. The castle table, of course, doesn't surrender its flair. On Lent feasts, cooks stage shows with fish disguised as meat. Salmon cut into shapes, eels roasted to resemble pork, pies decorated to look like capons. It's culinary cosplay, and everyone politely applauds. The monastery prefers restraint, though even there, feast days of saints allow fish served with a little extra spice or honey. The debate lingers in every hall. Is fasting about health, humility, or holiness? Historians still argue whether ordinary people actually kept all the required fasts, or whether records reflect ideal more than practice. You suspect human appetite has always been inventive at finding exceptions. But in monasteries, discipline mattered. The bell ruled the stomach as firmly as the soul. You imagine a brother muttering, "I gave up meat for Lent," and another whispering back, "You gave up meat last Lent too. Welcome to the club." What strikes you most is how creativity blossoms under restraint. Fish ponds dug beside cloisters, elaborate pottages flavored with herbs, almond milk soups, and subtle disguises all show how scarcity teaches invention. In castles, fasting becomes a stage for extravagance without meat. In monasteries, it becomes a practice of patience and obedience. Both prove that hunger can be managed, shaped, and even turned into meaning. As you step from the refectory into cool cloisters, you realize Lent and fast days taught medieval people how to bend rules without breaking faith, how to transform appetite into ritual, and how to make eels and almonds carry more weight than they probably deserved. Ahead lies the garden, where the raw ingredients of these meals wait quietly in soil and stone. You wander out into the cloister garth, and the scent of earth greets you more softly than any spiced feast. The monastery garden is no ornament. It is pantry, pharmacy, and calendar rolled into one square of soil. Here, the true backbone of monastic meals is coaxed from the ground. Most monasteries across medieval Europe cultivated extensive gardens divided into sections: herb gardens for medicine and flavor, vegetable plots for daily pottage, orchards for fruit, and fish ponds for protein on fast days. These were not decorative courtyards, but living larders, tended with diligence because silence doesn't fill a stomach. You walk past leeks rising like spears, onions huddling in rows, cabbages curling tight as fists, and beans climbing poles. A brother bends over, pulling weeds with calm precision, as if each root tugged free is another prayer said. The pottage you tasted in the refectory comes alive here. Barley ground from the grange, leeks from this very soil, herbs clipped from beds arranged in orderly knots. Many monasteries laid out herb gardens in intricate geometric shapes, believing that divine order could be reflected in soil patterns as much as in scripture. Herbs are the quiet heroes: sage for strength, parsley for digestion, mint for breath, thyme for coughs, rosemary for memory, savory for appetite. You realize half the medicine chest doubles as seasoning. Monks write herbals, manuscripts cataloging plants and their uses, combining ancient lore with their own experiments. You picture a medieval doctor prescribing 2 sprigs of parsley and a prayer before bed, and wonder if your pharmacy would honor that prescription. The orchard offers apples, pears, and cherries. In season, they are eaten fresh. Out of season, they are dried or pressed into cider. Nuts, walnuts, hazelnuts join the store, adding fat and flavor when winter leans heavy. Bees hum nearby, their honey collected not only for sweetness, but for preserving fruit and brewing mead. Even in restraint, sweetness sneaks into the cloister. Fish ponds, dug with meticulous care, gleam under the sun. Carp and pike swim in their slow circles, waiting for Fridays and Lents. Monks maintain sluices, feed the fish, and harvest them like underwater crops. Historians still argue whether fish ponds truly kept monasteries self-sufficient, or whether trade and donations filled the gaps. But standing here, you see the logic. Faith doesn't gamble with hunger. You glance at the pond and imagine a monk whispering, "Stay fat, little carp. Lent is coming," like a farmer talking to his flock. Flowers, too, have their place. Marigolds, violets, roses, both for beauty and for use in remedies. Calendula colors broth. Violets soothe. Roses sweeten syrups. The cloister garth becomes not just a kitchen supply, but a living sermon. Everything has purpose, from root to blossom. You sense how different this is from a castle's supply chain. There, lords rely on rents, hunts, and markets. Here, monks coax the soil daily. It means menus are steady, predictable, often repetitive, but also resilient. Pottage may bore, but it never fails. Bread may darken, but it never disappears. Herbs may not gild a peacock, but they turn cabbage into comfort. Historians still argue whether monastic diets were healthier than those of nobles. With more vegetables, legumes, and fish, the cloister table may have offered better balance. Yet restrictions on meat, coupled with frequent fasting, could leave brothers thin, especially in harsher climates. Still, the average monk likely lived longer than a serf, thanks to stability, hygiene, and medical herbs. You sip imaginary leek broth and weigh length of life against length of feast. You imagine monks writing Yelp reviews of their gardens. Consistent, reliable, never runs out of leeks. 5 stars, would weed again. As you leave the garden, the sun paints the cloister warm. You carry the knowledge that monastic kitchens don't just cook food. They cultivate it, record it, and sanctify it. The monastery turns earth into order, and order into sustenance. Ahead lies the question of poverty and plenty, where vows meet cellars and restraint bends to comfort. You step from the cloister garden into the cool hush of the cellar, where barrels and baskets keep secrets against the vow of poverty. The monks have promised simplicity, but the storerooms whisper a more complicated truth. Poverty may be holy, but plenty is practical. The rule of Saint Benedict emphasized moderation, all things in measure, and monks were to avoid gluttony or extravagance. Yet monasteries, often endowed with lands, tithes, and gifts, could accumulate wealth that translated into well-stocked cellars, productive dairies, and buttery shelves lined with ale. You see both ideals tugging on the same ladle: restraint in principle, comfort in practice. The buttery, where ale and wine are kept, smells faintly of malt and resin. A brother dips into a cask, measures carefully, and makes a mark on a wax tablet. The ale is mild but abundant. The wine is rationed but steady. Cheese wheels rest nearby, aging into sturdiness that will last through winter. Some monasteries became famous for their cheese, selling it to travelers and townsfolk. Precursors to the regional specialties we know today. Imagine a monk stirring curds, unaware he's inventing the ancestor of Parmesan. Bread and dairy form the backbone of daily comfort, but gifts from patrons add sweetness. A noble might donate barrels of wine, wheels of butter, or even exotic spices to curry favor with the abbot. These offerings end up in kitchens or guest houses, where restraint softens into hospitality. You picture a patron saying, "Take this cask of claret as a gift," and the cellarer muttering, "We'll suffer through it somehow." The vow of poverty keeps monks from personal ownership, but not from collective abundance. Orchards yield apples pressed into cider. Apiaries provide honey for candles and sweetmeats. Fish ponds teem with carp. The grange produces grain in quantities a village might envy. Historians still argue whether monasteries lived closer to luxury than their vows allowed, or whether steady food supply was simply the byproduct of good management and land ownership. To your stomach, the difference matters less than the result. Pottage, bread, ale, and sometimes a treat. Even in fasting seasons, comfort peeks through. Almond milk stands in for dairy. Honey sweetens Lent dishes. Fish arrives fresh from ponds rather than stale from barrels. On feast days, the table loosens. Fish dressed in sauce, fruit served with honey, cheese brought out in abundance. Still, compared to castle extravagance, the monastery keeps its dignity intact. You imagine a monk declining gilded peacock with the line, "No thanks, I'm watching my vow of poverty." Some monks, especially those of higher rank, did bend the rules. Abbots occasionally enjoyed richer fare in private, or entertained guests with dishes the brothers wouldn't taste. Hospitality justified indulgence. Yet even then, meals remained structured by moderation. No live birds burst from pies here. Only steady plates, steady prayers. The paradox is clear. Poverty does not mean hunger. Monks may vow simplicity, but their tables reflect security that peasants outside could only dream of. While villagers feared failed harvests, monasteries had granaries and gardens. While peasants tasted meat a few times a year, monks at least had fish and cheese regularly. Historians still argue whether this made monasteries hypocritical or humane institutions. You decide. It depends on whether you're inside the cloister walls or standing hungry at the gate. You picture a monk writing a sermon on humility while nibbling cheese so fine it would headline a Paris market centuries later. You leave the buttery with its ale casks, the dairy with its cheeses, and the cellar with its barrels, realizing that vows and reality often share the same bench. Poverty here is about spirit, not storage. Plenty, when managed wisely, is less sin than safeguard. Ahead, the two worlds will collide, abbots and lords dining together, monks feeding knights, and hospitality binding both power and prayer with bread. You move from cellar coolness back toward the hall. Only now the world blurs. The boundary between castle and cloister softens, because when guests arrive, lords, Knights, abbots, and pilgrims. Tables overlap. Hospitality is the one commandment both worlds share. And tonight, you see how power and prayer negotiate over bread. A noble guest strides into the abbey, boots muddy from road dust, but greeted with dignity. The guest master leads him not to the brothers' table, but to the guest house, where food is better than ordinary cloister fare. Monasteries were required to provide hospitality to travelers, rich or poor, as a reflection of Christ's command to welcome the stranger. Pilgrims, merchants, even beggars might find a meal here, though the treatment depended on their rank. At the guest house, the table glimmers a little more. Fish roasted with herbs, bread finer than the brothers' dark loaves, wine poured without strict rationing. The abbot might join a noble guest discussing land, politics, or donations over plates more generous than the rule normally allows. Some abbots kept separate kitchens for guests, ensuring visitors enjoyed comforts that brothers could not. You imagine a monk explaining, "Oh, that wine? It's only for strangers. If you live here, you're out of luck." In castles, the script flips. Monks, abbots, and clerics often sit as honored guests at high feasts. They bless the meal, then share in gilded spectacle. The saltcellar is theirs to approach, the fine trenchers set before them, their portion generous. This blending of worlds turns dining into diplomacy. Lords win spiritual favor by honoring monks. Abbots win temporal allies by accepting delicacies. Hospitality also extends downward. Pilgrims knock on abbey gates, and the almoner distributes bread, broth, and ale. In castles, beggars line up at the doors, waiting for broken meats from the feast. Historians still argue whether such charity genuinely alleviated hunger or served more as ritual display of generosity. But to the hungry, a trencher soaked in sauce was more than symbol. You imagine a pilgrim writing his travel diary. Hospitality here, 4 stars, stew a bit thin, but the bread was warm. At shared tables, conversations cross boundaries. A knight tells of campaigns. A monk counters with miracles. A lord hints at alliances. An abbot negotiates land rents. Deals are sealed with wine. Arguments softened with fish. Friendships forged over cheese. Food here is more than survival. It is currency, truce, and contract. The contrast is striking. In castles, hospitality is about display. Guests dazzled by sugar and spice. In monasteries, it is about duty. Guests comforted with steadiness and warmth. Yet both teach the same truth. Refusing to feed a stranger risks losing more than reputation. Bread becomes diplomacy. Ale becomes alliance. Hospitality becomes policy. You think of a medieval proverb that might have been, "The road to a treaty is paved with full stomachs." When the guests leave, the abbot returns to his brothers, the lord returns to his dais, and the dogs resume their posts. Yet the memory of shared bread lingers. Both castle and cloister know. You cannot separate food from fellowship. And as you step away, you realize the story is nearly full. One last course remains, the midnight crumbs and reflections that gather when the candles gutter and the world drifts toward sleep. The candles in the hall shrink into trembling pearls of light, and the monastery lamps dim to quiet shadows. You are left with the last tastes of the journey, crumbs, dregs, and memory. The clamor of castle feasts and the hush of cloister refectories both fall away, leaving you in that still hour when the body is full enough and the mind begins to wander. You look down at your trencher, softened and heavy, once a plate, now almost pudding. In castles, this would pass to the poor at the gate, a gesture of charity and reputation. In monasteries, the equivalent scraps feed lay brothers, guests, or even livestock. Medieval society turned nothing edible to waste. Every crumb was part of an ecosystem, whether charity, animal feed, or compost for gardens. Hunger was too constant an enemy to ignore. A servant sweeps the rushes, and dogs nose about for overlooked morsels. The salt cellar gleams faintly in the darkness. Crown of a night now ended. In the monastery, the book closes, the bell falls silent, and bowls are stacked with quiet finality. Both rooms settle into sleep, though one drifts on laughter and wine, the other on prayer and discipline. Some monasteries allowed a midnight collation, a light snack of bread and drink, to strengthen brothers during long night vigils. Even silence admits a crumb when devotion stretches hours thin. Historians still argue whether these meals, extravagant or restrained, shaped health more than spirit, or spirit more than health. Did nobles shorten their lives with meat and spice while monks lengthened theirs with pottage and fish? Or is the truth more tangled, dependent on fortune, season, and accident? You sip the last of your small ale and let the question hang in the quiet. You imagine a medieval physician prescribing less peacock, more cabbage, and being immediately uninvited to the next banquet. In the castle, you remember spectacle, sugar castles, gilded peacocks, and trenchers mapping rank like a compass. In the monastery, you remember steadiness, leeks, bread, and the bell-ruling bites as much as prayers. You realize both worlds invented their own food drama. Castles had theater, monasteries had loopholes, and neither was entirely boring. The night deepens. Dogs curl against the walls. Monks return to cells. The world exhales. You stand in the doorway between both tables, holding all the lessons at once. Food is never just fuel, but symbol, performance, duty, comfort, and power. Bread can be a plate, a prayer, or a treaty. Salt can crown a lord or season a fast day pottage. And silence itself can feed. You think if time travel were real, you'd skip the peacock, but never miss the almond-milk pottage. Curiosity, after all, thus point, has its own appetite. You step out beneath the stars, both castle towers and cloister roofs outlined against the same sky. One world glittered, the other hushed, but both whispered the same truth. At table, medieval life revealed itself most clearly, not in swords or sermons, but in spoons and salt. And now, as the candles gutter and silence spreads across stone, you let the story settle. The noise of minstrels fades, the hiss of fires softens, the clatter of trenchers disappears. What remains is only the rhythm of breath and the memory of meals long gone. You picture the great hall again, though dimmer now, empty of guests and servants. The salt cellar has been removed, the torches quenched, and only the faint smell of smoke lingers. The benches are bare, the rushes swept, and the long tables look less like theaters and more like simple wood. The performance is over, and what survives is quiet. The monastery, too, has gone still. The refectory benches are dark, the reader's lectern empty, the bowls stacked neatly in the scullery. Outside, the fish pond lies silver under the moon. Herbs fold into themselves, and the bell waits for morning. The silence is no longer discipline, it is comfort. You breathe deeply, letting the images drift further, softening like bread in broth. You see monks bent in gardens, servants in kitchens, nobles at tables, peasants at gates, all sharing one truth. Food binds them, comforts them, teaches them. Whether gilded feast or humble pottage, every meal told a story. Now, as you close your eyes, let the flavors fade into warmth. Imagine the hush of stone cloisters, the low crackle of embers, the steady rhythm of a bell across fields. The world is fed, the world is tired, and the world is finally still. Sleep comes gently, as steady as bread rising, as soft as candle smoke purling. You are full of stories now, nourished by history, and ready to drift. Good night, sweet dreams.